Freddie Prinze was making $25,000 a week. He had just performed for the president. His catchphrase, "looking good," was everywhere. But on January 28, 1977, he started calling everyone: his mother, his ex-wife, his friends. Everyone saw the warning signs, but nobody could stop what was coming. At just 22 years old, the star of Chico and the Man was done pretending. What happened next shocked Hollywood forever. Edward Carl Prutzel carried a secret that shaped his family forever. In 1934, at 19, he escaped Nazi Germany as a young Jewish and Lutheran man. America gave him a new life, but tragedy followed. During his first marriage, his 5-year-old daughter, Alice, drowned in their swimming pool. Edward was painting the house and wasn't watching. Finding her lifeless body crushed him. From that moment, he never forgave himself. Alcohol became his escape. His drinking destroyed his first marriage and left him empty. Even after marrying Maria Graniela, he stayed haunted by the past. The fear of losing another child kept him distant. That dark secret would follow the family forever. Maria Graniela loved Edward, despite his scars. Born in Puerto Rico, she came to New York to work in a factory. She hoped her love could mend him. On June 22, 1954, she gave birth to Frederick Carl Prutzel at St. Clair's Hospital. The world would come to know him as Freddie Prinze. Maria fought hard to give him a better life. Freddie promised himself he'd do better. Comedy became his escape. His mother wanted him to grow strong, so she put him in ballet class. Freddie was a chubby, asthmatic boy with glasses. Ballet was an odd choice for a boy back then, but Maria wanted him to control his weight and feel proud. At the same time, she gave him a strict mix of cultures. On weekdays, he went to a Lutheran school. On Sundays, he attended Catholic Mass. It was confusing. It was hard to fit in, but it shaped him. He learned to adapt. It made him tough. Freddie also learned that humor could save him. Kids teased him for his weight and asthma. Instead of fighting back, he made them laugh. He mimicked teachers. He told jokes in the boys' bathroom. Soon, kids skipped class just to see him do his routines. Even at the prestigious Fiorello H. LaGuardia High School, he kept making people laugh. Comedy became his armor and his ticket out. Life in Washington Heights was tough. By the mid-1970s, gangs like the Savage Skulls and Kofan Kings ran the streets. Freddie hung around dangerous people. Humor was his way to stay safe. Even then, he knew most funny kids in his neighborhood ended up in prison. "Those guys ended up in prison," Freddie once said. Growing up fast was not a choice. It was what his world demanded. Freddie decided to change his life. He auditioned for LaGuardia High School of Music and Art and Performing Arts without telling his parents. It was a big risk, but he did it. Getting accepted gave him hope. At school, he practiced ballet and comedy. It was there that he found his voice and his confidence. For the first time, he felt like he belonged. But outside of school, survival was tough. Freddie dealt small amounts of drugs near 157th Street and Broadway. The drug trade was part of daily life. Selling gave him money and respect. It also gave him a sharp view of how hard people struggled. This experience made him wiser and gave him stories to tell. Freddie was also a hidden musical talent. Even as a teenager, he played the drums, guitar, and piano. Tony Orlando and Dawn heard him sing and invited him to work on the album To Be With You. Music and comedy came together in Freddie. On stage, his timing was perfect. Off stage, his heart was full of rhythm. He decided to leave school before his senior year. Many thought it was crazy, but Freddie knew comedy was his future. Going by the Hungarican, he performed at the Improv and clubs all over New York. By the time he was 19, people were already saying his name. Walking away from school was a gamble, but it was one that paid off. It gave him the chance to chase his dreams, and those dreams would take him much further than anyone thought possible. After leaving the High School of Performing Arts, he headed straight into Manhattan's comedy clubs. Night after night, he took the stage at places like the Improv and Catch a Rising Star. The air was always buzzing with energy. Big names like Robin Williams, Jay Leno, and David Brenner were there too. But Prinze stood out fast. He had a style nobody had seen before. He called himself Hungarican, blending Puerto Rican and German-Hungarian roots into his jokes. Audiences loved his honesty. He was funny without trying too hard. Sometimes he'd jump on stage with nothing prepared. That's when he was at his best. He could make people laugh by telling stories about his family, his culture, or anything that came to mind. 19-year-old Freddie Prinze played Chico Rodriguez. He had only recently appeared on The Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson, and now he was the star of his own series. The story was simple, but powerful. Chico was a bright, hopeful young Chicano working in a run-down garage owned by a grumpy old Anglo named Ed Brown, played by Jack Albertson. That mix of youth and wisdom, comedy and heart, especially Chico. Prinze played Chico as energetic and full of dreams. Together they created a perfect balance of humor and honesty. They argued, they learned from each other, and slowly became like family. The show's creator, James Comack, picked Prinze after watching him read with Albertson. It was obvious they had real chemistry. That chemistry wasn't just on screen. Off-screen, the two actors were close. This real friendship made the serious themes in the show feel more real. Chico and the man dealt with racism, poverty, and the gap between generations, but it did so with humor and warmth. That balance kept people coming back every week. Audiences weren't just watching two characters, they were watching a heartfelt bond grow right in front of them. And the show mattered for more than laughs. Prinze was making history. He was the first actor of Puerto Rican descent to lead a primetime show on a major network. The series was also the first American television comedy set in a Mexican-American neighborhood, with a mostly Latino cast. That was something new for Hollywood. Prinze himself was German and Puerto Rican, playing a character who was Mexican on his father's side and Puerto Rican on his mother's. That detail connected to his own life and gave him a special sense of authenticity, knowing that fame is never simple, even when it looks easy. That fame exploded on television. In 1973, Prinze appeared on Jack Parr's show. It was a small but exciting taste of national attention. Charlton Heston, who was also a guest that night, noticed Prinze right away. Heston liked his timing. The audience liked his charm. But the big break came a few months later, on December 6, 1973. Prinze walked onto The Tonight Show set at just 19 years old. He delivered his set with his usual humor about his background and family life. Johnny Carson was so impressed that he invited him to sit down for an interview. That was a rare honor, especially for someone that young. On December 6, 1973, a 19-year-old comedian named Freddie Prinze walked onto the stage of The Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson. No one in the audience really knew him yet, but by the end of his set, everything had changed. Prinze was funny in a way that felt fresh and real. The crowd laughed hard, and Johnny Carson himself was clearly impressed. It wasn't just an ordinary stand-up spot. Carson did something he rarely ever did for new comedians. He invited Prinze over to the couch for a sit-down chat. That simple gesture told millions of people watching that Prinze was someone special. Overnight, this teenager had gone from playing small clubs to becoming a household name. Carson rarely gave such strong approval to a newcomer. He was famous for having high standards, and making him laugh was tough enough. How those pills and powders messed him up and changed him. Even when his wife left, Freddie kept using. The drugs fueled paranoia, insomnia, and long, dark nights. They created a vicious cycle that isolated him more every day. That isolation showed up in risky, frightening behavior. Freddie would joke about suicide by waving a loaded pistol around. At first, the safety was always on. Friends remembered him laughing and saying, "You thought I shot myself," after pulling the trigger. But his grip on reality was slipping. Business manager Marvin Snyder was with him the night of his death. This time, There was no safety on the gun. By then, Freddie had already gone through psychological testing. Doctors wrote that he was suspicious, disconnected, and angry. They recommended serious outpatient treatment or even hospitalization. On set, co-star Jack Albertson noticed him disappearing into his thoughts and moods, then forcing himself to smile. Everyone close to him had heard him talk about dying for at least a year. Freddie sometimes put a gun to his own head in front of people just to see their reactions. By the end of 1976, he had moved into a room at the Beverly Comstock Hotel. It was quiet there, too quiet. Friends rarely saw him. Some noticed him watching the Zapruder film over and over. The assassination footage became an unhealthy ritual. Even as Chico and the Man stayed popular, even after performing at President Carter's inaugural gala, Freddie felt empty. Marvin Snyder and a few loyal friends checked in when they could, but nobody could pull him back. Freddie Prinze had lunch with his childhood friend Ray Andrade on the day of his White House performance. Andrade saw him popping one pill after another. It scared him. Andrade told him, "If you don't stop, you'll kill yourself." Freddie heard the words, but didn't seem to believe them. It was a sad, eerie moment. Even as Freddie stood on top of the world, the spiral had already begun. Freddie often spoke of hope, yet his pain was obvious. He told Andrade, "No one has the right to end their life. As long as you are alive, you have hope." That was what he believed. On the outside, it all looked perfect. On the inside, though, Freddie felt trapped. He often joked that he was living at the speed of light, but in private, it was too much. After shows, he'd hide in his hotel room, exhausted by the spotlight and the loneliness that came with it. Fame and money came fast, but so did the pressure and isolation. Drugs started to fill the empty spaces. He was also a regular on the Dean Martin Celebrity Roasts, where his humor stole the show. Audiences loved him. One of his most famous roasts was of Sammy Davis Jr. Freddie took the stage with bold jokes that had everyone laughing so hard they could hardly breathe. Another time, at the roast of Muhammad Ali, he spoke about idolizing Ali and trying to box like him as a kid. Freddie had this rare skill of making people laugh while making them feel something deeper. But behind the jokes, the pressure was crushing. Every time he went up there, he had to top himself. Being on all the time left him feeling more fragile and more unstable. Freddie's love life was just as complicated. He dated some of the most beautiful women in Hollywood, like Raquel Welch and Pam Grier. Pam Grier wrote in her memoir about their passionate but turbulent relationship. She loved him, supported him, and witnessed him struggle with his demons. He could be funny and warm one moment and lost in sadness the next. Freddie also married Kathy Cochran in 1975, and they had a son, Freddie Prinze Jr. But the marriage fell apart fast. Rumors of cheating and his increasing drug use pulled them apart. Even with someone by his side, he never felt fully safe or truly loved. The fame, his childhood scars, and his trust issues left him feeling empty, no matter who was in his life. Freddie seemed truly happy. The birth took place in Los Angeles, though some people thought it happened in Albuquerque, where Freddie Jr. grew up after his father's death. The baby gave Freddie a sense of purpose. He loved being a dad and often spoke about him, but the addiction and depression never left. Within 10 months, Freddie was gone. Even in his final words, Freddie thought of others. He didn't want anyone to blame Dusty. Freddie was rushed to UCLA Medical Center. Surgeons fought to save him. His mother, Kathy, and friends like Tony Orlando stayed by his bed for 33 hours. A priest gave him last rites. Doctors told them, "It's in God's hands now." But there was no miracle. At 1 p.m. on January 29, 1977, Freddie was pronounced dead. He was just 22. Freddie had soared to fame so quickly. Fans everywhere loved him, but none of that was enough to keep him from feeling trapped by his pain. His sudden death shocked the public. Many had seen him as someone who had everything. His final hours showed how much was hidden behind his smile.